Well, welcome. You're still watching NTV Weekend Edition with me, Sandra Twinobio. Well, this week, the Ministry of Education has been locked in meetings with school heads over the fate of the learning year. There have been disagreements over when or if actual learning in schools should restart. Some are calling for a declaration of a dead year, while others think that there should be more controls like social distancing in schools, which many include reducing class numbers and online learning. But all these have a number of issues, and just like you, the student may be at home, and maybe the parent, or even you, the teacher, you must be thinking really what is happening and what will happen. And of course, tonight we are privileged to have FILBERT Baguma, who is the Secretary General of Uganda National Teachers Union. I'm not sure I should say welcome to Talk of the Nation. I think I should say welcome back home.
Yes, yes.
Because we are always having you in our studios.
Yes.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, I know majority of the people who are watching us tonight have clearly been following what has been happening in the country and how the education sector has been affected. First term is gone and we are now in second term. Would you say all hope is lost for the academic year 2020?
I wouldn't say all hope is gone because, first of all, the school calendar is not cast in stone, and therefore it can always be revised. We know, according to the school calendar for this year, we had 89 days for first term. And by the time they closed, we had moved for about 60 days. Second term was also 89 days. And then third term was around 82 days. That is making a total of around 260 days in a year. Now, today we are in July, which is supposed to be in second term. And supposing the curve flattened and Ministry of Health guided that it is now safer to reopen, you can still reopen school institutions in September and continue from where you stopped. You stretch to next year, and that would mean you have the revised school calendar for over about 4 years, and by the end of 4 years you can get back to where we were before COVID-19.
And we'll maybe be on track during the time.
And get on track.
Okay, but maybe before we continue with what may happen after all this period, do you think the whole idea of closing schools was justified? I mean, there are some countries that didn't close schools. Do you think the whole idea of closing schools was justified?
Obviously, it was a good decision at that time. You know, if you are a leader and you fear to take decisions, actually educationists indicate that it is better to take a wrong decision than no decision at all. The time schools were closed, there was no case, no positive case. But there were other cases in other countries, and therefore it was possible. And hardly 2 days after closure of schools, we received the first case in Uganda. And therefore it was the right decision at that time. Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, as you know too, we've seen some of your teachers diverting and starting to do odd jobs. Maybe
Yes.
for you who interacts with them on a closer basis, how is this affecting your members?
First of all, the lockdown and closure of education institutions brought in new dimensions. First of all, the teachers, the learners, and the parents and the guardians, all of us were ready for the teaching learning process. Now, all of a sudden, schools were closed. Now, there are those who entirely depend on salary. I mean, they don't have a garden, they don't have any other source of income, and therefore the effect was much. it is too much on those who teach in private institutions, because some of them were last paid in February of this year. But also even those in government, because you know you have a plan. Maybe you have acquired a loan and you have paid school fees. You knew the children would be in school and therefore having meals from school, and all of a sudden you have paid, you are paying installment of the loan, the children have come back, and therefore your budget has to be affected. Now, what the teachers are trying to do, and what I wouldn't like to call odd jobs. You see, there is a thinking in the public that when you are a teacher, for example, you cannot sell tomatoes. But my question is, what's wrong with me as a teacher selling tomatoes like any other person? Because there are people who are successful and have made money through what is purportedly said to be odd jobs. The only difference is that because the institutions are closed, when they see you doing some work, then they say it is an odd job because you are supposed to be in school. Yes. But if it is something that brings income, and I want to believe that when teachers are doing these other side income generating projects, they do them with a difference. Yes. And therefore, let's not discourage them, because it is also bad to keep at home and you don't have even anything that can bring you 1,000 or 10,000 or 5,000. And therefore, the public should not view it in negativity, that when a teacher is making chapats, then that's an odd job. But where is it written that a teacher cannot do any other business?
It is not written anywhere.
It is not written anywhere.
Absolutely, it's not written anywhere. And
yes.
Of course, we do support our teachers. We honestly do, as long as you're putting food on your table.
Yes.
That is the most important part. Now, as UNATU, what are some of the things that you're doing to ensure that at least you help your members go through this rough period?
First of all, you see, we have got the psycho-social support that is needed to both the teachers, the learners, the parents, and the guardians. We are living in what others have called the new normal. We even don't know when the institutions will reopen. When you look at the guidelines, the SOPs that have been put down by Ministry of Health, you will realize that most of our education institutions cannot implement them. Here is a case, the Ugandan staff ceiling level of primary schools is one teacher to 53 learners. And the guidelines are saying you should have at least 10 to 15 learners in a classroom. That will call for more infrastructure, that will call for more teachers, and therefore some of these are long term. But in the meantime, we are in close interaction with the Ministry of Education and Sports to make sure that can we have programs on radios, on televisions, so that we prepare our key stakeholders, the parents, the learners, and the teachers, psychologically. Because if we don't engage in the discussion of the teaching-learning process, they will lose hope. And some of them will bring in other things. The others will say, after all, let me leave this studying alone. And therefore, for us to avoid the impact at the end of the tunnel, we need to engage them. We engage in the discussions to make sure that the girl child does not engage in these other issues. Some of them have been married off, others have been impregnated,
In fact,
Now,
when you mentioned that, a friend...
The situation is terrible.
Is terrible. A friend of mine
Yes.
was saying, you know, when you go to school and everything fails, you just join another business. And I was like, which other business? And this person was like, the family business. So we do hope it doesn't, we do hope it doesn't get to that. And the Ministry of Education, I hope it is taking notes from you guys and also the interaction that you're saying. We hope it does yield results moving forward and the schools can be reopened. Sadly, we do not have a lot of time, but maybe in just briefly, what would you advise the ministry to do quickly in order to ensure that at least schools reopen, but they reopen with having the fact of health at the back of their minds?
First of all, the challenge we have is that Ministry of Education and Sports is not the one that is mandated to pronounce the reopening of schools. The reopening of schools is dependent on the scientists and the Ministry of Health. However, Ministry of Education should concentrate more on putting in place the standard operating procedures so that tomorrow when they say it is now a little bit safer, we have where to begin from. Currently, there is remote learning, but nobody can tell who is learning and who is not learning. And therefore, emphasis should be put on how do we prepare the institutions ready for reopening in case the reopening is to be realized. And I would encourage that we engage with all stakeholders. We have an unfortunate situation that the parents in this country are not organized in an association that when you want to talk to them, you can invite them. But the parents are key in this process because they are the ones with the learners. You may say we are reopening and the parents say, I cannot send my child. And therefore, we need engagement of all stakeholders to be on board. We move together. When they say reopening, then we are sure we can say, these institutions are ready, these are not ready, and what do we do in the circumstances?
So in other words, everyone should, all stakeholders should work together in order to, to have a positive outcome out of this whole pandemic.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for joining us once again and for allowing to come to our studios tonight. That was FILBERT Baguma, the Secretary of UNATU. We do thank you for joining us, and also thank you also for joining us on this Talk of the Nation. Continue sending us your thoughts as well on how we can ensure that schools reopen and, well, we fight the whole COVID-19 pandemic. NTV Weekend Edition will continue shortly.